We're here again, Treksters, on Best of Trek, Worst of Trek. Let me know in the comments what you think of the new format. Do you love it? Do you hate seeing my stupid face? Do you wish I'd nick Satire In Trek in lieu of packing in more episodes? Regardless, I'm your host, Dustin Wing. At number 645, Encounter at Farpoint, Part 3, or Q-less. Opening into Bashiring about the pre-ganglionic fiber, we soon encounter a runabout crew with no power and an extra passenger. Seems they picked up Captain Picard's 2-episode love interest Vash in the Gamma Quadrant, and their runabout lost all power on the return trip. Soon after, the station too starts experiencing power drains, and Q shows up to try and tempt Vash into coming back on the road with him. Towards the end, DS9 starts being pulled into the wormhole before Cisco figures out it's being caused by a gemstone Vash brought back to auction off, and beams it into space where it turns into a space stingray, and heads back to the Gamma Quadrant. There's some always funny moments with the infamous Q, but fails to land as a decent episode. We solve a 400-year-old disappearance at number 644 in Blue Alert, or the 37s. Voyager is amazed to detect rust in space. Upon further investigation, they find a 1930s truck from Earth. They beam it into the cargo bay, and Paris shows us he's a 20th century vehicle aficionado. When they turn on the AM radio, they detect a Morse code SOS signal that leads them to a nearby planet. When they can't transport down, they land a starship for the first time in Trek history, and we get to see one of the very few uses of Blue Alert. Turns out the SOS is coming from an airplane, also from 1930s Earth, but rigged up to a more modern power cell for continuous transmission. The mystery deepens when they find a group of humans in cryostasis in a nearby cave. One of them is the famed lost aviator Amelia Earhart. They decide to revive them and are taken prisoner at gunpoint briefly before rolling a successful diplomacy check and convincing the 1930s humans they are just there to help. Upon leaving the cave, they're attacked, and after outflanking their opponents, it's discovered they're humans. Apparently, a group of 300 humans were brought here by a race called the Briori to work, but revolted hundreds of years ago and have built cities on the planet. The crew get some shore leave time in the cities and are given the opportunity to leave Voyager and try to make a life here rather than try to get 70,000 light years home. Janeway frets about how many crew might leave, but in the end everyone stays on board. I have a lot of problems with this one, some of which might end up in the upcoming All-Fi No-Sci video series. How does the battery in the truck still have charge to start it and run the AM radio? Even though they use subspace for communication, why would sensors not detect this signal? Radio waves are just light you can't see. Why did the Briori go through the trouble of carting a truck and a whole airplane across the galaxy before abandoning them randomly? For that matter, why would they go through the trouble of abducting people from all the way across the galaxy in the first place? It's almost like this one was written for an Alpha Quadrant-based show, but ended up on Voyager. It was shot during Season 1, but held over as the producers thought it would make a better season opener. This show had a habit of introducing new characters that could have made interesting permanent characters on the show, but dumping them at the end. The blue skies seen through the viewports of Voyager while on the surface are some of the most interesting parts of the episode. Not knowing what it wants to be when it grows up is number 643. Robin Hood, Men in Pajamas, or q-pid. Q and Vash both seem to randomly show up in this episode that feels like several smaller scripts artificially crammed together. Vash is annoyed when she learns Picard never talked about their adventure on Risa to anyone on the crew. Q, wanting to do something nice for Picard, decides to try to teach him that love is his greatest weakness. There's an archaeology conference on board, which fills in the first half of the runtime before Q removes the main cast to Sherwood Forest and challenges Robin Picard Hood to rescue Vash before she's beheaded. And the second half of the episode is a live-action role-playing session where Vash rolls some crits to free herself. In the end, the crew swashbuckle to save her and get back to the Enterprise. Jonathan Frakes had to be taken to the hospital in his medieval attire. This one's all fun and no real piece that brings it into focus. It's just an interesting diversion. If you enjoy what you see, don't forget to like and subscribe down below. Every 50 subscribers, I'll do a live watch session of videos that people think I might have gotten wrong, starting with Cat's Paw when we hit 50 subscribers. Being Annoyed at number 642. Princess Needy. Or Elan of Troyes. The Enterprise is ordered to take the leader of a planet to marry the leader of another planet they're at war with. She's a demanding ruler that doesn't seem to understand courtesy or niceties. She won't even let Kirk leave the transporter room without dismissing him first. Along the voyage, Kirk and an ambassador from the other planet try to educate her on culture. She sees it as a slight against her and is dismissive of the whole process. I guess she'd never been talked down to in her life, because when Kirk starts reverse psychology on her and demeaning her, she falls in love with him, for some reason. There's some weird misogyny, mansplaining, and talk of a spanking. Meanwhile, the Klingons have an operative in Elan's guard that tries to sabotage the Enterprise's engines. The Klingons try to board or destroy the ship, but Kirk outmaneuvers them and gets Elan to her destination. Elan of Troyes' outfit, when beamed on board, is fabulous. Meanwhile, her guard's clothes are hideous. There's a good moral to the story, but it's not very much fun to watch. Going over the top at number 641. Faux Ponfar. Or Bounty. While in orbit of a planet they're thinking about taking shore leave on, Enterprise is approached by a Tellarite that offers to show them the best spots to vacation. When Archer meets him at the airlock, he's taken prisoner, and it turns out the Tellarite is a bounty hunter working for the Klingons. We find out the Tellarite is just bounty hunting to get the money to get his freighter out of impound. But when he finds out his former ship has been stripped to the bulkheads, he gives Archer a chance to escape when turning him over to the Klingons. Meanwhile, Phlox and T'Pol are quarantined in the decon chamber, better known as the sexy time room on Enterprise, due to having contracted a pathogen. Phlox is largely fine, but it causes T'Pol to go into premature Ponfar. She tries to escape decon and convince Phlox to relieve her urges. There's weird Resident Evil style horror music with 80s style tom fills played when T'Pol escapes decon. We get to see Robert O'Reilly, known for playing Galron, in an episode with Klingons as something other than a Klingon. Almost every time Ponfar is brought up, it drags episodes down, with this being the worst of them. Unconscious at number 640 is Paranoid Hyperfixation, or Singularity. In the less than 45-second intro, we find the crew unconscious except for T'Pol. After skipping the long road, Archer complains about how his bridge chair is uncomfortable and wants Trip to do something about it. As the ship gets closer to a black hole they're studying, the crew starts fixating on certain tasks. Archer spends most of the run of the episode trying to write the preface to someone's book about his father, and has trouble trying to fit what he has to say into just one page. Trip is obsessed with getting Archer the perfect command chair. Reed develops the precursor to Red Alert. Hoshi goes insane trying to prepare the perfect soup for the crew since Chef called in sick. Mayweather goes to sickbay for a headache, and Phlox takes the opportunity to run long tests and wants to go in for unnecessary surgery. T'Pol stops him just short of lobotomizing Travis. Towards the end, everyone loses consciousness except T'Pol, who discovers that the only way to escape the strange radiation affecting the crew is to go through a part of the black hole area with asteroids and come out the other side where for some reason there's no radiation. She can't do it alone and gives Archer a cold shower and cup of coffee in hopes to bring him around enough to get the ship out of danger. For some implausible reason, it works. Archer tells Trip he likes the 1 centimeter he lowered his chair, but then immediately gets out of it as if he's still not impressed with his command seat. Crashing another shuttle at 6:39. War never changes. Or Nemesis. Chakotay's bad luck with shuttles goes from bad to worse when he ends up in the middle of a war zone on a random planet. He gets caught up in a struggle similar to the Maquis and is made to experience the atrocities of war. In the end, it turns out it's all been some kind of weird simulation training him to hate the enemy to be recruited into someone else's war. The people speak in a language similar to that in Terra Nova, and it's unclear how Tuvok was in Chakotay's mind or able to change the simulation at the end. This one tries to make light of PTSD from war, but just doesn't hit home. Janeway unbakes a cake at 6:38, retroactive abortion. Or Tuvix. After collecting plant samples, Tuvok and Neelix beam up, but a transporter malfunction merges them and a flower into a single entity known as Tuvix. At first, the crew and Janeway are happy to have him around, but once a way to uncombine them is found, she decides she needs Neelix and Tuvok back more than Tuvix has a right to his own body and his own choice. Tuvix pleads for his life in front of the bridge crew, but it falls on deaf ears. The doctor won't perform the procedure against Tuvix's will, so Janeway does the deed herself. Kes, who's been drifting away from Neelix all season and should be the voice of reason here, can't let Neelix go and wants them separated also. This is one of several times Voyager starts out with an interesting premise and runs it squarely into the ground at the end.
Ah, computer.
That program is available.
Thanks, Majel. Majel. Thanks, Majel. Majel.
Council Member Vosh is not aboard the Enterprise.
Thanks, Majel.
What magic do they possess?
Majel.
Satire in Trek. Satire in Trek.
No sign of disease or malnutrition or parasitic infection. No, I have no reason to keep you here.
You know what doctors aren't allowed to do with their lady patients?
Yeah.
Well, he did.
And they're not going anywhere until I personally talk to J. Edgar Hoover.
Why is J. Edgar Hoover on your phone? I didn't know. He's on everybody else's. Why shouldn't he be on mine?
I think you'll find that's manure.
Manure! I hate manure! There's something you should know. And what would that be?
Unlike some other Robin Hoods, I can speak with an English accent.
Please. Kes, you may be my only hope.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
You're gonna defile her in the tower.